We don't want 70 investment bankers talking about a case. How horrible would that be? Don't answer that because I know the answer. So we want this. So if you've done something non-traditional, if you're a Peace Corps volunteer or a teacher or an actor or an athlete, or you've just done something that is really beyond the normal realm of what we think about as a traditional job, then that's great. You stand out. Now, your challenge as a non-traditional applicant is to show that you can fit in, that you understand why this is the right path for you, that you've had the experiences that would demonstrate that you could thrive in a business school environment and then beyond. You need to demonstrate that you've thought about what is your desired career path. And if you can demonstrate that you could kind of fit in with the traditional group, then you stand a great chance. So what are the common threads? So you've got people applying to business schools. As an admissions officer, I had to go through thousands of applications. What were the things I was looking for? Well, I wanted to see how much responsibility you had in whatever your position was. I wanted to see some evidence of management, and management can be defined pretty broadly. So, if you're a young applicant, it's quite possible you never managed people directly, but you probably managed products or projects or processes or portfolios or resources. There's some management component to what you do, even if it's not direct management of others. So I want to see that. I want to see your success stories. I want to see how did you do relative to your peers. Were you on a faster track? Were you on a slower track? Were you successful? And if I had to sum it up in one phrase, I would say, you want to demonstrate that you've had a positive impact on your organization, whatever it is. You want to demonstrate that your organization is better for your having been a part of it than it would be if you had not been a part of it. That's what you're looking for, whether you have a very traditional job or a very non-traditional job. Things to be careful about as you start to write essays. Don't restate your resume, because your resume, it's in the application. It's going to be in there. So don't just give me a laundry list of accomplishments or a restatement of the things you've done. Your essays serve a different purpose, and we're going to jump into that in a little bit. Another thing you want to make sure you do in your application is make sure you draw on all of your experiences, even your non-work experiences. So if some of you applying to business school with just 2 or 3 years experience, your college record, the things you did, extracurricular activities, will play a role in the application. Those of you who've been out of school for 10 or 15 years, your college activities become a little bit less significant. Those of you who have active community involvement, and I certainly encourage that can play a role in your application as well. Those are some of the stories you can draw from to talk about your successes, to demonstrate your character. Let me tell you 2 mistakes people make in their essays that are 2 fairly common mistakes. One is candidates sometimes say, well, I'm applying to business school, so clearly all they really want to hear about are my professional successes. So Harvard, for example, every year has a question, what are your 3 most significant accomplishments and why do you view them as such? Other schools ask different questions, but generally we're asking for similar types of things in the different applications. So one common mistake is for someone to approach that question and say, well, I'm just going to talk about, I don't want to get into my personal stuff. I'm just going to talk about my professional accomplishments. So accomplishment number 1 is about a work accomplishment. Accomplishment 2 is a work accomplishment. Accomplishment 3 is a work accomplishment. What happens inevitably? Well, you've probably told 3 versions of the same story, highlighting the same strengths. So poor me, the admissions officer, I've got to go read thousands of essays anyway, and now I have to have you telling me the same story 3 times. That's kind of boring. That's not exciting. That doesn't stand out. It doesn't give me a variety of strengths. It's not interesting. It's not compelling. So you want to mix it up. What's another mistake people make in their essays when they're asked to write about their accomplishments? Is to go the other direction. You say to yourself, well, work is fine, but it's not really my passion. In fact, that's part of why I want to go to business school. But in my outside of work, I have some really exciting things to talk about. So I'm going to talk about my personal accomplishment number 1, and my personal accomplishment number 2, and my personal accomplishment number 3. Well, the problem there is it might make for a little more interesting reading, but you are applying to business school. Somewhere I do want to read about your professional strengths. So it does need to be in there. So in your essays, whether you're talking about your accomplishments or other success stories that you'll be asked to tell, make sure you have balance. So certainly include your professional strengths and professional success stories, but it's okay to sprinkle in some personal stories and community-related stories as well. I want to know what your strengths are, but I also want to know what your values are. I want to find out what's important to you. I want to feel, once I've read your essays, that I know you to the best degree that I can know you through a set of essays. A big part of applying to business school is recognizing that your application is a marketing document. And admissions officers don't necessarily like to hear it put that way. It can sound a little bit crass, but I don't mean it that way at all. The reality is that you're applying to business school. School can select among 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other qualified people. You want them to select you. How could you not look at it as a marketing document? That's exactly what it is. So before we get into some of the things, specific things that you'll write about, let's just talk about a couple of quick tactical things. So given that it's a marketing document, about how many mistakes do you think you want to have in the application? You want about 0. Now, you're not applying to be a proofreader, you're not applying to a writing program, and you'll probably find that some admissions officers are more accommodating than others, but you will also find some who are not at all accommodating. So why take that risk? And recognizing that you're in this very competitive process, don't make mistakes. Some of you are not native English speakers, and you'll be given a little more room than those who are. But do everything you can to not have mistakes. It means the quality of writing is very important. Now that, you could also make a case, wait a second, I know that communication is important in business, I know written communication is important, but this essay writing is very different than traditional business writing. So are you telling me that the way I'm able to tell my stories, my anecdotes, is going to be critically important as an applicant? Yes, I am. And maybe you could argue that that's a flaw in the process. I'm not here to argue that, but I'm here to tell you that's the way it is. If you tell a great story, you stand a great chance. And I can think of, when I think back to my time on the admissions board at Harvard, I can think of several cases of students. Most students who get admitted to top tier programs will make it through. Overwhelmingly, very few don't make it. Even the very competitive programs, even a program like Harvard with a forced curve grading system, they try to scare you, but pretty much everyone makes it through. I could think of a couple cases of students who did not make it through, who, academically they could have, but they chose to leave because it was a bad fit. And in almost all cases, it was an applicant who, in hindsight, really shouldn't have gone, but he or she wrote such a compelling application. We would probably make the same admissions decision again, just based on the strength of the application, while knowing that there are some risks associated. So the quality of what you write, recognize that. Some of you, that's no problem. You're good writers. Others of you will likely engage outside help. So people you trust, colleagues, professional services, admissions consultants like myself or others, are on hand to help you craft the best application that you can. That's a very important part of the process. A couple more tactical things, then I'm going to work backwards into some of the strategic things, which is sort of the opposite order from the way I usually go. What about length of essays? What about length of essays? If schools will ask for different things, I think it can be considered one of the annoying parts of applying to business schools, or kind of one of the cool parts, is that it's not like college or law school where it's really just one personal statement and you could write the same thing for every school and be done. You do have to craft your essays for each school because they're asking different questions, because they want to know, again, overall they want to know the same things, but they have different focuses and different things they want to home in on, so they'll ask you different questions. So it forces you to really approach each application individually. But let's say a school asks you to write a 500-word essay on a topic. about how many words do you think it should be? Just shout out the answer. Yeah, about 500. So it was not a trick question. So how come I had to read essays that were 600 words, 700 words, 1,000 words? What does that say about the candidate? Yeah. I can't follow directions. I won't follow directions. Your directions are powerless against me. Everything it says is bad. It's bad, and it violates what I like to consider rule number 1 of the admissions process, which is this: don't aggravate the admissions officer. Don't do it. If they ask for 500 words, that's about what we think it should be. Now, in reality, it could be 450, it could be 550. I never sat there and went 498, 499, 500, 501. I liked you, but you went over. Now I have to reject you. If it's well written, I'm happy to keep reading. If it's poorly written, it's torture after about 300 words. But stick within the guidelines. Don't have typos. Don't have mistakes. Make sure it's well written. Those are just tactical points. But now let's talk a little bit about strategy. What are the things specifically on your essay? Since these essays are so darn important, that's where you're going to get to demonstrate your character, your personal strengths. So let's talk about things you want to write. Well, you're going to have an opportunity to tell success stories, and you should be thinking about cycling through what are the things that make you unique, what helps you stand out, and then what are the stories, what are the anecdotes you can tell that will highlight that uniqueness. That, in a nutshell, is what you're trying to do. People all the time over the years have come up to me and they'll ask, either, well, what are you looking for? Or, what am I supposed to write? As if there is this one uber applicant that if you can make your application sound like that, you'll be successful. Those are the wrong questions to ask. The right question is, how do I highlight my uniqueness? You can't make yourself sound like something you think you're supposed to be. You got to start from inside and work from there. Understand how you are likely to get stereotyped as an applicant. And it's not part of any plot. I'm talking about professionally, based on the kind of work that you do. It's not that admissions officers stereotype you, it's just that people who do similar things, often have similar profiles, will sound more alike than different. So what are the stereotypes that attach themselves to you? If you understand that, you have a huge strategic opportunity. So, or just show of hands, any engineers here? Okay, fair number. We're going to talk about you a little bit, and I mean no offense. When we think about engineers, what are some of the positive, you'll have to be loud because I can't hear that well up here. What are some of the positive traits that we think about when we think about engineers? Just shout out. Smart. Good quantitative skills. I think I heard that twice.
Really cool.
You are an engineer, aren't you? It's not hard to pick you out. We get a couple, you said really cool if you didn't hear that. Let's get a few others. So we got smart, quantitative, good detail orientation. What else? Two more. Tech savvy, I think that was technological as well. Good project managers. What's that? Methodical, which definitely could be a strength. Probably has a flip side as well. So, I would say we'd all agree these are the things we think about, and certainly, yeah, that's kind of what we think about engineers. So just for fun, when we think of some of the negative traits, you might want to close your ears for this. When we think of some of the negative traits for engineers, what are some of the things that we think about? Wait. I heard lack of people skills, antisocial, over-analytical. What? Big word, using big words, so which speaks to communication skills, maybe. Rigid.